Welcome back! In front of us is the Seiko 6138-0030, also known as the Kakume, meaning square eyes. Let's review this watch. But before that, please don't forget to click that subscribe button so you don't miss watch reviews like this. Thank you. This watch was released during the early 70s, and some might call this the Big Blue, due to its size, which is 43mm in case size and 15mm in thickness. It has a lug width of 18mm and a lug-to-lug of 44.7. As you can see, this is a big chronograph considering the era it was released in. This specific model we have here was produced on May 1975. There were two model numbers of this watch, a 6138-0030 and a 6138-0031 version, which is uncommon. This watch is the early Japan domestic version, with it bearing the 5 sports and speed timer at the same time. There is also a version with the chronograph automatic name, which is the international version, and lastly the speed timer version, which is a late JDM. The differences between the international version and the JDM versions is the date window right here. Let me show you. On the JDM, it has a silver or white finish. See there, the date wheel. And the international version is blacked out. There are also two variations of these hands. The one with the arrow hands are commonly found in the international version, and the baton hands on this one are found in the JDM version. As you can see, there's no loom. The bezel on this one has shown a bit of usage. As you can see, a lot of aftermarket parts being sold online. The only way to find out if the Kakume you've bought or planning on buying is original is if the tachymeter wording right there, if it's in yellow, then it's an aftermarket. The dial on this one is in good condition. There seems to be no signs of water damage. The hands and the text look faded, as to be expected. The buttons feel great. Let me test them here. Okay, all reset to 12. Excellent. You can see the date wheel there is a kanji date wheel. In all watches, I usually don't worry about the crystal of vintage or modern watches because they are probably the easiest to replace or polish if ever it does get heavily damaged. Look at the dial on this one, it's just so beautiful. Okay, so the bracelet on this one indicates Seiko and 5 sports. Okay, let's see the case back here. This is a simple case back, and inside is the 6138 movement, which has a 45-hour power reserve. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour with 21 jewels. It is a non-hacking, meaning if you pull the crown, the second hand won't stop. Some of you may wonder if I stop the chronograph right here. It's a bit weird because there's no second hand to indicate the timekeeping itself. But rest assured, the watch is still moving even if it has stopped. Oh, and before I forget, there is also a champagne dial version of this watch, which is only sold in Japan domestic market, and there's no international version of that color. It's a pretty cool color combination in my opinion. Let's just have a quick look on what it looks like on the wrist. This is a big chronograph for its time frame, and that's how it looks on my 6.5-inch wrist. It wears kind of tall, 15mm thickness, but yeah, it's a nice look. It's very iconic. You can really identify it from afar. If you're planning on buying this watch, what is it that you should be looking for? I'll be honest, a vintage Seiko is hard to find nowadays with everything in place. Buying a Franken watch is the last thing you want to do. A Franken watch is a watch that has parts from a different watch model and so on, and it might be similar, it might be from a chronograph too, or a specific part that you're looking for. You get the gist of it. So the first thing you can check for this watch is the dial and the condition it is in. There are aftermarket dials that look fresh, and maybe if it's too clean, it might be a replacement dial. It just has to have the right amount of patina, and the hands are supposed to be baton if it's JDM, and arrow if it's international. And you can also check the number there, 0044 on the dial, if it coincides with the model. The bezel insert, which I said earlier, should be silver or white, not yellow. The tachymeter there. And check the case if it is polished or unpolished. I would highly recommend unpolished, due to the fact that it might have been polished due to deep scratches or maybe to cover dents. Again, vintage watches that are polished might decrease in value, at least in my experience. And the case back, there are two types of case back. There's a horseshoe one, and this is the simple case back. Just make sure they're not buffed, and the serials and model numbers can be clearly seen. The bracelet has to bear speed timer if it's a speed timer only, and 5 sports if it's a 5 sports model like this one, and simply Seiko if it is the international version. Lastly, the movement. You gotta see the movement at least, because it is where you can see if the dial was replaced or even if everything else was replaced. You can see the corrosions, the rust. You also check if the functions work, if they reset all to 12. Look at that, beautiful. The movement is still beautiful in this one. So with all that said, this watch, the Kakume, is probably a top 3 favorite of mine in the Seiko Chronograph collection. The beauty of the deep blue dial is just mesmerizing, especially on outdoors. The hour markers are beautifully placed, and this watch can be identified from a few meters away. Yes, the case size might scare you a bit, but it does not wear like a 6309 turtle. It's recognizable, and those square eyes are just iconic. I hope I have helped you understand more about this watch, and if you're planning on getting one, I hope the tips have helped you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Stay safe.